you freeze during important moments, even after preparing for weeks? What if you could turn anxiety into your secret weapon and actually perform better under pressure? In this video, I'll share 6 psychology-backed techniques used by Navy SEALs and elite athletes that will help you stay ice cold calm when the stakes are highest. I discovered these methods after bombing a crucial presentation, despite knowing my material perfectly. The problem is, most people think staying calm means suppressing emotions, which actually makes anxiety worse. Neuroscience research from Stanford shows our stress response can be reprogrammed in just minutes using specific mental techniques. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly how to control your nervous system on command, so you never choke under pressure again. Let's dive in. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Your body can't tell the difference between a real threat and a stressful presentation. But there's one physiological hack that instantly tells your brain you're safe. The 4-7-8 breathing pattern is a tactical technique developed by Navy SEALs for combat situations. You breathe in through your nose for 4 counts, hold for 7 counts, and exhale through your mouth for 8 counts. The extended exhale is the key that triggers your parasympathetic nervous system. Research from Harvard Medical School found that controlled breathing directly activates the vagus nerve, which signals your brain to switch off the fight or flight response. This works because your exhale stimulates receptors that release calming neurotransmitters like GABA and serotonin. When you extend your exhale longer than your inhale, you're literally hacking your autonomic nervous system. Within 90 seconds, your heart rate drops by 10-15 beats per minute, and cortisol levels begin decreasing. First, practice this technique when you're already calm, so it becomes automatic. Do 3 cycles before bed each night for 1 week. Second, the moment you feel anxiety rising before a high-pressure situation, excuse yourself if possible, and complete 4 full cycles. Third, during the event itself, use modified 4-4-6 breathing to stay grounded without being obvious. Fourth, avoid the common mistake of breathing too quickly or shallowly. Make each count a full second, and really empty your lungs on the exhale. For instance, instead of taking shallow chest breaths during your job interview, use deep belly breathing that others won't even notice. But that's not all. Let me show you something even more powerful that Olympic athletes use right before competition. This next technique sounds almost too simple, but it's backed by decades of sports psychology research. Anchor phrases are short, powerful statements you repeat to yourself that instantly shift your mental state. These aren't just positive affirmations, they're neurological triggers. Think of phrases like, "I've done this before," "This is what I trained for," or "Pressure creates diamonds." The key is they must be personal, believable, and practiced repeatedly. Studies from the Journal of Applied Sports Psychology found that athletes who used anchor phrases showed 40% better performance under pressure compared to those who didn't. This works because repetition creates neural pathways in your brain. When you pair a phrase with a calm state during practice, your brain creates an association. Then, when you're stressed and repeat that phrase, your brain automatically recalls the calm state. It's classical conditioning applied to your emotions. Japanese Olympic coaches have used this method for decades because it gives athletes instant access to their peak performance mindset. Here's how to create your personal anchor phrase. First, choose a short statement that feels authentic to you, not something that sounds good but rings hollow. Second, practice saying it out loud 10 times each morning while in a relaxed state, really feeling the confidence as you speak. Third, write it on a card and review it before any challenging situation for 2 weeks straight. Fourth, when pressure hits, say it slowly 3 times while maintaining steady breathing. The common mistake people make is choosing phrases that are too abstract like, "I am powerful." Instead, use specific phrases tied to your actual experience like, "I nailed the practice run, I'll nail this too." Now, you might be thinking, what if my mind goes completely blank in the moment? That's exactly what this next technique prevents. Most people don't know this, but your body posture directly controls your brain chemistry, and you can use this to manufacture confidence on demand. Power posing is the practice of holding expansive, open body positions for just 2 minutes before high-pressure situations. Stand tall with your hands on your hips like a superhero, or sit back with your hands behind your head and feet on the desk. This isn't about looking confident to others, it's about triggering hormonal changes inside your body. Groundbreaking research from Harvard Business School, later replicated across multiple studies, found that holding power poses for 120 seconds increases testosterone by up to 20% and decreases cortisol by 25%. This works because your brain receives feedback from your body's position. When you take up space physically, your brain interprets this as a signal that you're in control and dominant in your environment. Evolution wired us this way because animals that survive are those that can quickly assess their status and act accordingly. Psychologists call this embodied cognition. Your physical state literally creates your mental state. Here's your implementation plan. First, find a private space 2 minutes before your high-pressure moment, a bathroom stall, your car, an empty conference room. Second, choose your pose, either the superhero stance with feet wide and hands on hips, or the CEO pose sitting with hands behind head. Third, hold it for exactly 2 minutes while breathing deeply. Set a timer on your phone. Fourth, during those 2 minutes, visualize yourself succeeding in the upcoming situation. The mistake to avoid is doing this while slouched or half-heartedly. You need to fully commit to the expansive posture for the chemical changes to occur. For instance, instead of reviewing your notes one more time before the interview, spend those final 2 minutes power posing, and you'll walk in with completely different energy. This brings me to something even more powerful that fighter pilots use to stay calm at 500 miles per hour. Here's where it gets fascinating. Your brain can only focus on one detailed task at a time, and we can exploit this to interrupt panic spirals. The 5-4-3-2-1 grounding technique forks your brain to focus on sensory input instead of anxious thoughts. You identify 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. This sensory inventory pulls you out of your head and into the present moment. Research from cognitive behavioral therapy studies shows that grounding techniques reduce acute anxiety symptoms by up to 60% within 3 minutes. This works because anxiety lives in the future. It's your brain catastrophizing about what might happen. When you force your attention to current sensory experiences, you literally cannot maintain anxious thoughts at the same intensity. Your prefrontal cortex, the rational thinking part of your brain, becomes active and overrides the amygdala, your fear center. Air Force pilots use variations of this technique during emergency situations because it prevents panic from overriding their training. Let me walk you through the exact process. First, the moment you notice anxiety building, pause whatever you're doing and take 1 deep breath. Second, look around and slowly name out loud or in your mind 5 specific things you see, not just a wall, but beige wall, with a small crack near the corner. Third, identify 4 things you can physically touch and actually touch them: your chair, your clothing, the table, your phone. Fourth, close your eyes briefly and identify 3 distinct sounds, maybe the air conditioning hum, distant voices, your own breathing. Fifth, identify 2 things you can smell, even if it's just the air or your own cologne. Sixth, identify 1 thing you can taste, even if it's just the inside of your mouth. The key is to be extremely specific and deliberate with each item. The common mistake is rushing through this checklist. Slow down and really observe each sensory detail for 5 to 10 seconds. But wait, there's a scientific reason why some people naturally stay calmer than others, and you can train this ability. This next one is crucial because it addresses the root cause of pressure-induced panic. Stress inoculation is the practice of deliberately exposing yourself to controlled doses of stress to build psychological resilience. Think of it like lifting weights for your mind. You intentionally create uncomfortable situations when the stakes are low, so your nervous system learns that stress won't kill you. This could mean tacky, cold showers, doing public speaking at low-stakes events, or setting artificial time pressures during practice. Studies from military psychology programs show that soldiers who undergo stress inoculation training show 70% less performance degradation under combat pressure compared to those who don't. This works because repeated exposure to manageable stress literally rewires your amygdala to be less reactive. Your brain creates new neural pathways that say, "I've survived this feeling before, I can handle it." Elite athletes use this constantly. They practice under conditions harder than competition, with coaches yelling, crowds booing, and distractions everywhere. When game day comes, it actually feels easier than practice. Here's how to build your stress immunity. First, identify what specific pressure triggers you most.